You're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm Weston Williams, joined this week by Oliver Camacho, George Cedarquist, and Matt Cummings. All right, this week, George goes inside the huddle for a doubleheader with two of the team behind Gods of the Game, the football opera that opened at Grange Park Opera in England. The discussion kicks off with the company's founder and chief executive, Wasfi Kani, and concludes with cast member Millie Forrest. And then, friend of the show, Larry Brownlee, takes a free throw on the comic-tragic role of Ramos Platé, the star bel canto tenor's first French Baroque role. Plus, in the 2-minute drill, while government funding for British opera houses face turmoil, English National Opera may put the company's home court advantage at risk. The dollar is still strong, though. American opera Anglophiles, let's bail them out. That would be you, George. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Stitcher and Spotify. Click follow. On Apple Podcasts, hit the plus sign. Send us a voice memo or email us your hot takes at operaboxscore@gmail.com. You'll get an OBS beer coaster and an OBS lapel pin just for sharing your own hot take. And without further ado, it's Oliver Camacho.
Why, thanks. I think the read on American opera Anglophiles, I wonder if that's my bad. I wonder if the syntax of that makes sense. I mean to say people who are American, who are operophiles and Anglophiles.
And Anglophiles. Anglo-operophiles, if you will.
Yeah.
Opera Anglophiles?
Anyway, that's mostly George, at least on this Chicago.
Yes, certainly he thinks a lot about Gilbert and Sullivan, which I think qualifies him. Matt Cummings, how's it going?
I mean, that Gilbert and Sullivan is basically the prerequisite to be an opera-anglo-file. Like Frauenliebe und Leben. Can you do that in English?
I have a little note from George here in Sports Talk. He says, it's tiresome enough having to deal with the undefeated Eagles. Thank God the Phillies lost the World Series and the Union lost to the MLS Cup final. And double thank God Bama lost to LSU. Well, I don't really appreciate that last one that George made me read because, as you all know, I'm all about that tide keeping on rolling.
The Phillies, I feel bad because we are friends with Philadelphia. They lost to Houston. Are we friends with Houston? We're definitely not friendly with Dallas anymore. So,
yeah, I don't know what this state of politics is. Or
yeah, maybe this is like
between...
the enemy of your enemy is your friend.
It could be. It could be.
Okay, but I wanted to just quickly shout out Holger Rune, 19-year-old Danish tennis player who won the Paris Masters final against Novak Djokovic. And it looked like he was going to be defeated by Djokovic because Djokovic is famous for coming back and just crushing his opponents. But this kid, 19 years old now, is going to make it into the top 10 after beating just about everybody in the Paris Masters. And when he got up to make his speech, I, for the first time, felt bad for Novak Djokovic because, I mean, I'm not that much of a fan of Novak anymore. But just
why?
Novak.
Did something happen?
Just Novak just standing there looking like his, 30-something self, which is not old by, opera standards, but by tennis standards, he's definitely, a veteran now. And Holger Rune, when they gave him the mic to give his acceptance speech, he literally sounded like he was still going through puberty. Like his voice was so high, and he looks like a Cabbage Patch Kid. That's how cute he is. So he's got chubby cheeks and little tiny lips, and he's just very fresh faced and tiny.
Maybe he's just a tennis haute contre.
Matt, because George is not here, I am looking to you for our update on Da Bears.
Yeah, you're not the only one who has to read something that really disagrees with you constitutionally, because he is trying to make this orange and blue take over for the black and gold that is instilled in my being. But the Bears had
loss.
Not a successful game, but they did get kind of a record out of it. It's one of those sports records that's like, oh, the first time that this was done on a Tuesday by someone with a mustache. Their quarterback, Justin Fields, who's in his second season, has set the record for the most rushing yards by a quarterback in a regular season game. With 178 yards rushed in the game on Sunday, still behind the all-time record of Colin Kaepernick, who had 181, but that was in a playoff game, so it, for this record, doesn't count.
Tragic.
And just for those people who aren't football fans, I couldn't think of the sport.
So people word. Like Oliver, exactly.
Yeah, both of those names, Colin Kaepernick and Justin Fields, those are black guys.
Yes, Oliver.
That's very well said.
You did it.
Such an artful introduction.
We've solved racism thanks to Oliver. Let's talk some opera.
Huddle up. Let's go inside the huddle.
Well, it was a match made in heaven when we at operaboxscore heard about Gods of the Game, a football opera, back in January of this year. Get this, a full orchestra in the pit, familiar opera tunes, and a video chorus of football fans brings the thrill of the World Cup to the stage. The world premiere of Gods of the Game took place at Grange Park Opera in England last month. Commissioned by Sky Arts, the TV station, and starring actor and comedian Lee Mack in the commentary box, Gods of the Game is a glorious celebration and a bitter condemnation of the world's most popular sport. The show goes out on the Sky Arts channel in the UK November 13th. Music by Julian Phillips is the head composer, along with his students from the Guildhall School of Music and Drama, with a libretto by Phil Porter. Inside the Huddle is a double header to talk about Gods of the Game. First up is Wasfi Kani, the general director of Grange Park Opera. Wasfi was born in London's East End to parents from Delhi and Agra who had fled India at partition to take refuge in the UK. After studying music at St Hilda's College, Oxford, she worked in programming and designing financial computer systems. In 1992, Wasfi was made chief executive of Garsington Opera, and in 1997 she founded her own opera company, Grange Park Opera, which in 2016 moved to an estate in Surrey, England. And here, in just 11 months, she led the construction of the Theatre in the Woods, a 700-seat opera house based on La Scala, which is the UK's first new opera house to be built in the 21st century. Since its inception, Grange Park Opera has produced more than 80 operas while receiving no government subsidy. Wasfi Kani received a CBE in the 2020 New Year's Honours List for services to music. She joined me over the phone from London, and I asked her first to help set up what the idea of the English country house opera is and how Grange Park fits into that world.
Country house opera was invented by Glyndebourne. It was invented by John Christie in about the 1930s. His grandson, Gus, who's my friend, he now runs it. And in about 1990, so long time afterwards, Garsington was invented. It was very, very small. And I was kind of bought in there at about 1992. And my goal there was to build it up. So I stayed there for 5 years. I kind of quadrupled the size of it. And then a banker said to me, Wasfi, you'll never, ever be fully in charge in Garsington. You need to set up your own place. So I set up my own place called Grange Park Opera, and I moved it from Hampshire to Surrey to be closer to London in 2017. And then we were just getting going and everything was going really, 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 really well. And then the pandemic happened. And now it's very difficult for everyone. But the concept of country house opera, I think you have things like that at Santa Fe, or I'm sure you've got others as well. The idea is that when you go to the opera at the Royal Opera House, which I love, it's always a bit of a hassle because it starts at 7:30. Should I eat before? Shall I eat afterwards? Shall I not eat at all? And then where shall I park? What if it's raining? I have to rush. I have to dash to the tube. So we say, set aside a bit more of your life, set aside a half day and really go into another world. Now, our place down in Surrey, it is, it's a 14th century house and a 16th century garden. So 17th century garden. So you really do feel, though you're on the edge of London, sort of the city is far away. And the idea is that you arrive and everyone's looking very beautiful. We encourage people to really be rather elegant and gorgeous. So, George, you'll fit in perfectly. And then with all that curly hair of yours. And then so you investigate these gardens, because there is a series of walled gardens. And then you walk through a very historic orchard with a 300-year-old mulberry tree, which probably was being planted when Queen Elizabeth I, she stayed there for a week. And then you go through another wall and there's a huge opera house, 5-story opera house. Go to the first act, go back through the orchard, go and have your picnic, go and dine in the 14th century house, leisure, go back for the second half, go to sleep if you want to go to sleep because you've drunk too much. And, the whole thing's meant to be about leisure and chewing and consuming and feeling music, but are surrounded by leisure and not surrounded by freneticness.
And location is so much to do with that.
Well, we all tried to make our places look as gorgeous as possible. I was very lucky because when this famous guy, Bamber Gascoigne, inherited this place on the edge of London from his aunt, who happened to be a duchess, when he inherited, and I went to him and I said, I think what I need to do is build an opera house just in the woods, just behind the orchard. And he said, yes, that's just what I've always wanted. He was in his 80s. And he never thought he was going to have such a big, wonderful new project. So, but as I said, there's a series of formal gardens, probably planted in the 17th century. There are 700 yards of brick wall that were built in the 17th century, extraordinary. And then this rather wild orchard. The time really to come is after the operas are finished. If you come along in August or September, they're like 10 million apples that are very tart. And I love them. I'm always picking up whole bagfuls of apples, and I have a mainly apple diet.
Your path to founding and to running Grange Park is truly extraordinary. You are the daughter of parents from India. You go to Oxford. You work in financial computer systems. So here you are in this business, and you're a woman, and you're a person of color. It's utterly amazing. So what have been like the guiding principles that have led you and Grange Park to where they are today?
Okay, I have one guiding principle for the whole of my life, and that is to work a bit harder than everyone else. That's my guiding principle.
What does hard work mean? Yeah.
Just always try your very, very hardest, and my hardest is probably a bit harder than... Well, it might not be harder than your hardest, but it might be. So, my guiding principle my guiding principle also is actually, I want everything to be perfect or as close to perfect as possible. And you could say that I'm a control freak, but I think if I espouse perfection, then the people around me will espouse perfection. And I think that I've built up a group of people around me, and I think that's what they do. They know that it's not a case of, I can get away with that. Every single thing, every bit of signage, we built the most amazing round lavatory building, but you don't really want to hear about that, George, do you? Do you want to hear about my lavatories?
I would love to hear about your lav.
Okay, this is what is truly extraordinary. So when we were building this theatre in I was going to say 1917, but it was 2017, the architect said, of course, what you should do is you should put the lavatories in the basement. And I said, the trouble with putting lavatories in the basement, I've seen this, there's a queue going in and there's a queue coming out because they're all going out the way they're going in. I'm going to keep that queue, the lavatory queue, away from the queue of people waiting to go into the opera house. So I built a little separate building, and everyone said, well, of course, the easiest thing to do is just put a little square building there. And I said, no, I want to make it as difficult as possible. I'm going to build a round building, and the round building will allow people to come in one side and go out the other side. So there's not a queue, and there are 23 ladies' cubicles, but this is really too much information. But, even the lavatory roll holders and the locks and everything about that and the beauty, rather than putting mirrors above the taps, you don't do that because people stand and block up the wash basins. There are special beautification areas. So I'm a control freak.
It's all about leisure.
It's all about leisure and people. and being somewhere where you think is exceptional. And many people do arrive at the opera and they say to the person at the gate, they go to the champagne bar, they pick up a glass of champagne and they go, "Where's the lavatorium rotundum?" So they're more interested in that than in the opera house. You can't see it because it's behind these wonderful 17th century brick walls. Anyway, that was that.
Gods of the Game is a pretty extraordinary opera. Speaking of extraordinary, what was the germ and the seed of that, the path to commissioning and developing this opera?
Okay, so in all honesty, this isn't my idea.
That's very big of you to say that.
This is not my idea. Your listeners may be horrified to hear this. When the words, "and now for the sports news," I'd like the radio to turn itself off. So the truth is, I think I have a negative interest in sports. What happened was that, sorry, but what happened was Sky, which are a big broadcaster, I think the Sky Arts people realised that Sky Sports were going to get all the juicy bits all around the World Cup and no one was ever going to watch Sky Arts. And they had this unbelievably visionary idea that they were going to commission an opera. And though they commissioned it, they needed a facilitator. So basically, they needed a theatre because they didn't just want to film it like a film. They wanted it to be in a proper opera house with people watching it and with all the restrictions of the stage, rather than, you can do anything on film. So it was their idea. And then I was providing really the venue and the machine to create it. I was a little bit involved in the commissioning, but it wasn't they had some separate people doing it. How was it received? Well, interestingly, most of my opera people didn't want to come. And they were sending me messages saying, "Why would I want to come to an opera about football? I'm looking forward to Tristan and Isolde." Lots of different people came who hadn't been to our venue before, they hadn't seen our opera house. And then some of our regulars came, and I got most of the messages I got. They said it was completely amazing, how brilliant of you to do this and something totally different. But I did get one message which said, "Wasfi, how could you possibly have done this? It was terrible." Of course, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't terrible, but she didn't like it. But I get a lot of this stuff. So it had very, very high production standards, had a live orchestra. It's very colourful. I hope your people will watch it on Sky. It had some sort of rousing anthems, which very annoyingly went round and round my head, and I couldn't get rid of them. But I've just got rid of them, so don't sing them, please.
I won't sing them. That's what makes them so good, right? Is that everybody can sing. You'll never walk alone, or whatever it is they sing up in Liverpool. But surely working on the show and having this be in your opera house, surely that has changed the negative interest in sports to a positive interest.
George, I think I need a lot more therapy than just you smiling nicely at me to say that this will have changed me. I mean, I think the problem is we all have so few minutes alive on this earth, and I'm really interested in archaeology. And there's so much to learn about archaeology. I just don't have the time to do the sports thing.
Yeah. But the show is ostensibly about sports, but surely it's about much more than just football.
Well, so it's about greed and corruption, and there's some funny moments. And there are a couple of very, very clever scenes when Sky Arts got Sky Sports to record in their commentary studios that they use during football matches. But they obviously scripted it. And so at one point in the opera, at 3 points in the opera, you see the whole sort of Sky studio projected onto the back of the stage. And they're all commenting about what's happening in the opera. And I thought that was actually very, very witty and very different. No, I did actually enjoy it, and I'm very, very glad we did it. So it's about bad people and good people and how the good people win. Of course.
Yeah. Is there any death in this opera? Most operas have death in them.
Well, at the very end, the president, who's a bad person, he leaves the stage. He leaves the stage saying, I think I might try my hand at politics. That is tantamount to death.
Thanks again to Grange Park Opera General Director Wasfi Kani joining us on Opera Box Score. It's an Inside the Huddle double header on Gods of the Game. English soprano Millie Forrest studied at the Royal Academy of Music and the Royal College of Music. She was awarded the Ferrier Loveday Song Prize in 2020. Last March, she sang with the Jenny Parker Young Artists in a Royal Opera House project championing new works by female composers as part of International Women's Day. With her regular duo partner Hamish Brown, she's given recitals at the Wigmore Hall and performed at Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club, Cadogan Hall, and is recorded at Abbey Road Studios. She also joined me on the phone from London, where I asked her to first and foremost set up the plot of Gods of the Game and her role in it.
Vico and I was playing the role of Ava. We're childhood friends who grew up together playing football. And Vico has become such an international celebrity that he's slightly fallen out of love with the game. And Ava sees it as her duty to sort of help him find himself again. And by the end of the opera, I think she does.
That was super pithy and concise. That was shorter than a football game.
Well,
itself.
Yeah, I can give you some. I can tell you a little bit more, but I don't want to give away any spoilers.
Don't give it away. Don't give it away. Let's listen to a clip. Millie, this is you singing with Michel de Souza, who played the role of Vico in the aria Everything is Football.
Where we come from, everything is football. It's played on every street, in every park, on every beach, on every television screen is football. And though we may be poor, because of football we feel rich.
And though life can be hard,
We love to live because of football. And everything we know through football. Faith, imagination, decency, cooperation. Honor, win on goals. And everything we love through football. A passion that rises as one.
and so we long to have this chance
To share the happiness we found through our love. What is the beautiful
Everything is Football. That's the aria that we just listened to. Tell us a little bit about that specific moment in the show and what does that mean for you, your character, and what was it like to prepare that specific aria? It's a duet.
So at that particular moment, we are competing against wealthier countries than our own to host the next year's World Cup tournament. And our bid for that host is this speech that's a duet between me and Vico. And and it comes towards it's about halfway through Act 1. And up until the duet starts, I'm not sure whether Biko's going to turn up to come and do it with me. And I get to the end of my first line, and then he says, Ava, I'm not too late, am I? And then we continue the rest of the duet together.
What was the rehearsal process like for this piece? So it's an opera composed in English, but it's also a world premiere. Things can get squishy, things can get dicey, things can get contentious, and things can also be brilliant. What was this process like?
Well, we didn't have a lot of time. It was a short opera. It's only 90 minutes long, probably. But we started rehearsals last week of August, and the first show was the 6th of October. So it was a very quick change around. And so that brings a bit of stress, but at the same time, I like that because everyone had commitment, and we were encouraged to improvise a lot, go with our instincts, and we were blessed with the most incredible cast of actors. Everyone was amazing on stage. We had an incredible director, an incredible choreographer who just brought it all together. And then we were totally brought to life by this incredible chorus that we had. So the process, it was rushed, but it had a lot of energy and direction.
Talk me through the chorus a little bit more, right? They were singing football anthems?
Yeah, exactly. So they, bless them, they had probably 10 costume changes in just a 2-act opera. They worked so hard. And they were singing football anthems. They were being fans. They were being hot dog vendors. They were being cleaners. They were representing everyone who plays a role in the game and hosting football events. They were amazing, and it wouldn't be the same show without them.
So you're creating the role of Ava in this process. How important is sports really in like the day-to-day of rehearsals, right? Like it's a show about football, but it's about so much more than that. You know, what do you need to know as a singer-actor creating this role?
Yeah, so I was really nervous before the rehearsal started because I've had a baby over the last year, so the amount of activity that I've done, the amount of gym time has been limited. So I was a little bit nervous that like I would just look like an idiot. But actually, I love sports, and in the past, I've always kept fit. It's a really important part of being a healthy working musician. It's really important to be physically fit because of how much we ask of our bodies. So in the rehearsal room, it was more about learning to walk like an athlete, to carry your body as if you were wearing a lot more muscle, actually, because we had two athletes actually in the cast, amongst the principals who go to the gym twice a day. But for me and Michelle, it was a little bit more like we felt like we had a bit more of a point to prove. And it was about, moving with a lower center of gravity, making sure that we didn't look too singery when we were walking around the stage. And after a week of rehearsals, I decided, right, I'm only going to come to rehearsals in leggings and a sweatshirt because it just helped us get into the characters more. In terms of staging, we had to recreate a football match on stage, which was hard. And the choreographer came up with this amazing idea of telling the females football final through my eyes. So the audience just saw flashes of what I had going across in front of me. And that was very clever. So it involved very minimal ball activity. But there was one crucial moment where I had to take a penalty and I missed. So I did have to look like an athlete on stage.
Wow. Shadows of Gareth Southgate in Euro 96, missing that critical penalty. But he's redeemed himself now that England made it to the the final last year. It's interesting what you say, Millie, about singers and athletes, because I've always believed that, right? Is that singers in opera are three things. Obviously, they're phenomenal musicians. They're expected to be great actors. But a third of their job is to be an athlete, right? There is no art form I can think of that is so demanding and so punishing. And I think maybe it has to do with breath and with breathing. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you. I think you're absolutely right. We use our lungs in a very abnormal way. We have to to take big breaths and then release our air very slowly, but with no tension. Yeah. So we have to do it very freely and with lots of flexibility, and actually it's more about releasing the breath rather than how much you're taking it in, which is very similar to how athletes work as well. It's not about hoarding the breath, it's about releasing it in a controlled but relaxed way. So I think you're absolutely right. What we ask of our bodies is really colossal, and it takes a long time to perfect. And there are times when it just doesn't do exactly what you're expecting it to do.
Gods of the Game comes out later in November. What is next up for you on your roster?
So we're entering. Well, we're into the dreaded audition season now here in the UK.
Yeah.
So auditions start mid-September and go on until Christmas, really. So yeah, I've got a few of those, and then some lovely concerts around Christmas time. I'm currently understudying for the Royal Ballet, which is amazing, and I'm very, very lucky to have worked with them. And then I'm back there again with the Royal Ballet in February on another project. I'm not sure what I'm doing for the summer yet. I have a few options to weigh up, and we'll see what happens after some auditions.
That is the business, right? It is auditioning, and of course you're a parent. Before I let you go, give me 30 seconds on what is the day-to-day life, being an opera singer and also being a parent.
We're still figuring it out. It's just kind of, you just find a way of making things work. We're very lucky that we kind of went hell for leather on sleep routines from very early on, because I don't think you can do this job sleep deprived. Just don't think you can. So we're very lucky. Me and my husband are both freelance musicians, and we're both well rested, and we've got lots of help nearby, very willing grandparents. But it's hard. It's really, really tricky. And we just sort of take it in turns. So it was his turn to be the full-time parent when I was doing Gods of the Game. And then he's just got back from Brazil. So it was my turn for the week. So yeah, we're just juggling it about, and it's amazing. But yeah, sometimes it's tricky.
And thanks again to Millie Forrest, who plays the role of Ava in Gods of the Game. Again, Gods of the Game coming out on Sky Arts in the UK, November 13th.
Free throw.
So last weekend, I finally aired my interview with Larry Brownlee, which I recorded at Opera Philadelphia. Thank you, Frank Luzzi. And I had a little extra content, so I decided to offer it up to OBS. You remember that Larry Brownlee made his French Baroque role debut as Platée in Paris, of all places, Paris National Opera. And I've always fancied myself to be semi haute contre. When I was chasing after singing career, I definitely have the ability to do coloratura, but not the stamina somehow for Rossini. But somehow I could sing French Baroque stuff because it just stayed in that tessitura. And that
in a bit of an unyielding way.
Yeah. But I mean, if I could just keep my voice there, then I don't have to, worry about singing beautiful tone on the bottom of the register.
Right.
So somehow I just was more comfortable singing that haute contre stuff. And I always thought that how come there are not more bel canto tenors trying to sing this music? Well, it makes sense. It's because you need in bel canto to have a beautiful tone all the time. And you need to be able to sing, with evenness of vibrato and just beautiful color from top to bottom. And that's not necessarily required of haute contras. But here is Larry Brownlee. Haute contra. Here's Larry Brownlee kind of flirting with this repertoire. And I encourage you all to go just type in a search engine, the video of this production, seeing Larry Brownlee dressed up as the nymph Platée, the water nymph Platée. And he seems to have discovered some new comic chops in doing this show. Anyway, here's what Larry Brownlee had to say about it. This coloratura ability of yours has also very recently led you to sing Rameau. And if I'm not mistaken, is this your first Rameau role that you did?
It is my first Baroque, French Baroque, Rameau, any of that. It was the first for all of those. Okay, so I'm so excited about this. I hope that we get more of this from you. There's not a recording of this, but you sang in one of my favorite operas, an opera called Platée, which is supposed to be a comedy, but is actually one of the most heartbreaking things. It is. Oh, it's so awful. It's so awful, but I enjoyed it a great deal.
Well, just to put the opera in a nutshell, Jupiter is playing a game and pretends to be interested in a very unattractive water nymph, which you play. It's a gender bender for you. And you are supposed to get married to Jupiter. And yes, you are the butt of the joke.
I am.
Yeah.
They all go through to great lengths to embarrass me, to humiliate me in front of everyone else. They treat me horribly, terribly. And it's just the meanest thing. Platée, all she wants is love.
Yeah.
And she believes she's the most beautiful thing in the world.
Yeah.
She believes she's the most wonderful water nymph who just is. She believes that everybody wants her, which is comical in that sense. But at the end of the opera, when they're publicly humiliating her, it's heartbreaking. And they treat her so terribly that so many people thought, this is just the worst thing in the world. And so it was great to play that. You had a lot of dramatic meat on the bone to play. And
it's high.
It is. It is high. And even when I looked at it, you know, some of the instrumentation sometimes can be, the tone could be played at a lower pitch or a higher pitch. And so since I had worked already with Mark Minkowski, he said, well, Larry has a high voice. Let's put it at a 434 or 438 or something like that, which is high. It wasn't 420 thing or 420 anything or 415, which is a little bit lower. So singing it at that pitch, singing what's written very high, and a lot of people kind of mix that anyway.
Yeah.
I don't usually mix. I mean, I can mix, but I just sing with my voice. Singing that was just, it was a great experiment in what my voice and technique can do.
Et vous, Juno, pleurez. Allons-y, mes états. Pleurez.
From performances of Rameau's Plate, the aria for the title character Quitte, Nymphe Quitte, with Larry Brownlee and Mark Minkowski conducting.
This just in, the 2-minute drill.
All right, listen up. Here's everything you need to know about what happened in Operaland this week.
The Arts Council of England has announced that future funding will focus on organisations outside of central London, causing English National Opera to be defunded by £12.6 million. Over the next 3 years, ENO will receive £17 million to develop a new business model and is expected to move to Manchester. The news comes as other major opera houses also saw reduced funding, such as the Royal Opera House, down 10%, Welsh National Opera down 34%, and Glyndebourne, which saw a 50% reduction.
The opening of a Maria Callas Museum in Athens is being planned for the Sopranos Centenary Year 2023. The Callas 100 celebration began earlier this season at Teatro San Carlo di Napoli and will likely inspire similar tributes all over the world. OBS will be sure to update this story as Callas was known to cancel.
Angela Wee has been appointed Principal Associate Concertmaster of the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra. Wee is a second prize winner of the Sarasate International Competition and was a finalist in the Menuhin International Violin Competition in Beijing.
Teatro Real de Madrid has received the 2022 Medallas de Oro from the Academia de las Artes Escénicas for its essential role in the dissemination and practice of the performing arts. Meanwhile, Catherine Cook, Philip Skinner, and Dale Travis were honored in a ceremony following a performance of Dialogues of the Carmelites at San Francisco Opera, in recognition of their artistic excellence over 3 decades with the company.
On the disabled list, Oksana Lienev has withdrawn from conducting the upcoming performances of Tosca at LA Opera due to personal reasons. Former LA Opera young artist Louis Lorazeb will take over the podium in her stead, making his main stage debut with the company.
Exit stage right, Russian soprano Galina Pisarenko has died at age 88. Pisarenko was a member of the Moscow Academic Musical Theater from the 60s until 1990. She later co-founded and directed Moscow New Opera and taught at the Moscow Conservatory.
And on this day, November 7th, in 1702, it was the first performance of André Compra's Tancred in Paris. André Gretry had a premiere, Les Méprises par Ressemblance, in Fontainebleau in 1786, and 15 years later, in 1801, his La Casque et les Colombes premiered in Paris. In 1829, it was the first performance of Fromental Alevi's Le Dilettante d'Avignon in Paris. In 1876, Frederick Smetana's Hubitska, or The Kiss, premiered in Prague. In 1910, it was the first performance of Naughty Marietta by Victor Herbert, and that was on Broadway. Hail to the Queen! In 1926, it is the birthday of Dame Joan Sutherland. We got to get ready for Sutherland 100 in 4 years, everybody. Happy birthday to Welsh soprano Dame Gwyneth Jones, born this day in 1936. We got to get ready for
Jones 90.
In 1941, it was the birth of German mezzo-soprano Tudor Schmidt. In 1943, Canadian mezzo-soprano Judith Forrest was born. Happy birthday. And happy birthday to American composer Stephen Stuckey, born this day, November 7th, in 1949.
And that's your 2-minute drill.
just heard the end of the Semiramide aria Bel Raggio Lusinghier, sung by Joan Sutherland on her stunning vocal recital, The Art of the Prima Donna, from 1960. If you have listened to Sutherland before and like are not really sure what it's all about, you need to listen to this album because she sounds inhumanly good here on all of the hardest repertoire that has ever been written for the soprano voice.
And surprised that in the Willow song from Otello, which is like, why would she be singing this? It's actually very, very good. It's
and
very,
you can like understand the words. Yeah. It's really amazing singing.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I'm looking forward to a Sutherland 100 for sure.
They won't be celebrating it at the Coliseum.
Yeah, that's true. So why don't you tell us all about that, Matt? Because things are kind of, London bridges are falling down a little.
Yeah, it seems like a lot is kind of going unsaid in these articles, that probably because they're from British publications and everyone over there knows that their government is just like completely falling apart these days, as though we have any room to talk. But some things are universal. So massive cuts coming to many of the cultural institutions across England, and one of their main goals apparently is to reduce the amount of funding that's going to London and Central London specifically, right. and prioritize organizations that are on the outside of the city or in other parts of the country.
The Shire.
And, yes, the proverbial Shire. And so English National Opera really ended up on the chopping block here. They typically receive like £12 million in grants, and that was axed to zero for their normal operating expenses. These articles say that adds up to about a third of their annual operating budgets. Because England is kind of in between the American one, where it's all based on donations and ticket sales, and like the rest of Europe, where the government really carries the bag to make sure that the lights stay on.
Yeah.
But so the only money that they were able to get was this £17 million grant that's supposed to last them 3 years. And basically they're saying, that if you do a little bit of back of the envelope math here, that comes to less than half of what they were getting annually before. And with that new grant, they're supposed to come up with an entirely new business model and relocate to another city.
Yep.
And that doesn't really seem like how math works to me, but I'm not a billionaire prime minister.
Yeah, obviously a lot of turmoil in the government over there. Economy crashing, pound going down. And I think a general push from the Tories to privatize as much as they possibly can, which has been their MO for quite some time now. And it feels like in some ways that it's finally coming to these big arts institutions. And speaking as an American to all of our British listeners, welcome to the pool. The water is not fine. In terms of the lack of government funding.
No, it's a wave pool. It's full of diapers that probably got ripped off of other babies, and you might die at any moment.
Yeah. And obviously, if you really work this problem back, you can probably attach it to, the pandemic, and then of course Brexit, and compounding problems all the way down.
I bet if you looked really hard, you could find a way that this is all Margaret Thatcher's fault, which I'm in favor of personally. But
yeah, it's kind of the same. If something's wrong in the U.S., it's probably Reagan's fault. If something's wrong in the British Isles, it's probably Thatcher.
That said,
in any case,
by the time we record our next episode, The Crown season 5 will have dropped, and I am very excited.
I thought you were going to say by the time this drops, we'll have seen the elections from the midterms, so we might not be in a position to talk about Britain anymore.
We also might have a new prime minister by then. Who
That's
can
true.
say these days?
Place your bets now, everybody. Yeah, not kind of a slow news week. Otherwise, I will say to everyone in the UK who is hurting in more ways than one right now, I really sympathize. Do your best to get through this, and hopefully you guys can have a general election at some point soon and start fixing things. But good luck, everybody. Good luck.
Yeah, it's tough out there.
Let's do some good call, bad call.
Good call, bad call. on Opera Box Score.
So I'm going to go a little off book here because George isn't here to stop me, and I'm going to go ahead and have a little good call. We got a little mini listener mailbag here from a certain Anthony from the Bronx.
Hey, George. This is Anthony from the Bronx. I've called you before, George. Anyway, I was listening to the latest episode, and the guys were talking about this contest for singers, but I didn't know what contest it was. They never said the name. At one point, they said, "He who should not be named," and I thought, is there a Harry Potter contest for singers? That's wonderful. People love Harry Potter. Any chance to get Harry Potter into opera is okay by me, George. So anyway, if there's any clarification you can give to me, I'd appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed the week off. Bear down, Chicago Bears, right? Am I right? Yeah. Anyway, I'll talk to you later, George.
Oh, Anthony,
Classic.
as erudite and confused as always. I love it. Oliver Camacho.
I just want to shout out a friend of the show, Lydia Yankovskaya, who you can never stop talking about what she's doing. She's always got something else cooking. And she just made her debut with LA Philharmonic. And earlier last month, she conducted Chicago Symphony Orchestra's she participated in the Chicago Symphony Orchestra Music Now series. And she's currently in rehearsals for King Roger, the Szymanowski opera, which opens in about 2 weeks. So I don't know how she does it, but she came on to WFMT to talk about the Szymanowski and to give hints about the other operas that are happening this season at COT. And I think the board of directors at COT must feel so proud of themselves for having snagged her as her star was rising. And really, everybody knows this name. She just conducted Edward Tulane and Minnesota Opera. And there's so many other things that I'm sure I'm not even remembering that she's done recently. What a star, what an advocate for contemporary opera, and what just a great person. Also for mothers, just to be frank, she's just incredible. And I'm really looking forward to singing King Roger, because I trust her. I'm not a contemporary opera guy, but I trust her taste, and I know I'm going to get something out of it because it's her.
I'm not sure if I would call King Roger contemporary, but yeah, it's a great
opera.
For me,
it is. Anything after
that's
1800
true.
To me. So.
Yeah, that's true. Last time Oliver saw a new opera, it was by Verdi, and he had a heart attack. Matt Cummings.
Yeah, we will be putting into our show notes a really touching story from NPR by Jody Hilton, who wrote this up, about a Ukrainian opera singer named Olga Abukamova. And it tells about her emigration to the U.S. as a part of the fleeing the conflict over there from Putin's war on Ukraine, and details how one of the things that she had to make sure that there was room for in their luggage was her Ukrainian sheet music, because it's just so important to her that music survives and that she is able to carry it forward onto the next phase of her life. So a really powerful statement about just how central music is to all of our lives that maybe the UK Cultural Ministry could read.
We can only hope, right? That is it for this week's edition of America's Talk Radio Show about opera, and maybe that's it for this week's edition of Opera in Britain as a whole. We'll find out. Our announcer is Norm Waddell. He's at normwaddell.com. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast. On Stitcher and Spotify, click follow. On Apple Podcasts, hit the plus sign. Send us a voice memo or email us your hot takes at operaboxscore@gmail.com. You'll get an OBS beer coaster and an OBS lapel pin just for sharing your own hot take. Our creative consultant is Oliver Camacho. Our audio editor is me. For your co-host, Matt Cummings, and our guests, Wasfi, Kani, Millie Forrest, and Larry Brownlee, I'm Weston Williams, asking you to continue the conversation about opera as you plan your Callus 100 party. We're back with an all-new show next week when we go inside the huddle with soprano Megan Gillis. Plus, you get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more defunding British opera. Join us.